we found in her paperwork that she loved. I came from the land, and I will return. In between I will, with my art, celebrate the earth and who I am. Art. And that sums up Mom. She loved being alive. She loved nature. She loved life. And she woke up every day with a smile and an eagerness to find something beautiful. And she always tried to put it down on paper. And it didn't matter what piece of paper it was. Anything would work. We even came across one in the Presbyterian hymnal where she had drawn the people sitting in front of her and then torn it out and said at the bottom, I know, dot, 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 I know. She was prolific, to say the least. So at her funeral, I wasn't sure how to speak of my mother in terms of that time. And at the last moment, I just had this flash, well, let her art speak for herself. So we took everything off the walls and put it in the car and took it to the funeral home. And I decided, let's just use the chairs that nobody's gonna be sitting in anyhow. And we turned them into easels for all her paintings. And it turned out there were 66 chairs, and I had brought 66 pieces of art. It was just meant to be. And at that time, everybody suggested that we do a real show instead of a chair art show. Let everybody see what she had actually done her whole life. That these are her prized pieces that she kept in her house. So people didn't get to see them. And if she didn't really love it, she would sell it and give it away. But she kept what she loved. So that's why so many are not for sale. We just can't part with them yet. But we do plan to have them. Slowly and surely we'll get them all duplicated and replicated so that they are authentic, real-looking replicas of her paintings so that we can share them with people that want to enjoy them too. We're working on that. So to start with, we decided to lay this out in chronological, loosely way. And starting at the doorway, you'll see a crayon picture of a dog that she drew freehand and then drew perfectly straight green and red lines. And she was probably in 2nd or 3rd grade at the oldest at that time. Then, I'm going to step back one step. She told me and wrote down on paper that her earliest childhood memory was the desire to create art. That she had wanted to do it from her earliest moment. So, knowing how precocious she was as a child, I'm sure she pestered her parents, who were very willing to do whatever they had to for their children, into getting her something that she could make something out of. So her dad gave her a chunk of lead, and she sculpted the cat out of lead that Ian was pointing to, and that was before she started school. So she had that urge very early on. And when she went into 7th grade, she had a favorite teacher whom she just loved and who was very young and fashionable. And my mother decided that she was going to give her a drawing a day. So all school year in 7th grade, she would draw a fashion article on a model for her in hopes that she would want to have that and that she could have her mother make it. I don't know if that happened for everyone, but every day she went to school and gave her a photograph or a drawing of these. The teacher then saved these for decades and gave them back to my grandmother, who later returned them to her when she was an adult and had a family of her own. So please take time to look at these, and this one is her portrait notebook, which she told Ann and myself, I don't do portraits because I'm terrible at them. No, she wasn't. She just didn't want to do them. So she was very good at them. After high school, she got into pottery very heavily. And the reason for that was she had attended college for a year or two and came down with TB, tuberculosis. So she spent several years in the hospital with TB, ended up having an operation to remove part of her lung so that she could leave the hospital because she was tired of being in the hospital. While she was in there, she only had a magazine to look at. That little boy in the pencil, that is one that she did while she was in the hospital. I'm sure there was more, but I think that's the only one we have. So after she got out of hospital and had to recuperate, her mother actually bought a kiln and put it in her basement so Mom could stay at home and do clay work and fire it and keep busy for the recuperation period. That and to keep her busy while my dad was in Europe, serving his 2 years in the Army, because my mom just wanted to be with him. So, all the pottery that you see, no, I take that back. There are cast pieces, the Roosters, Dancing Girl, St. Francis that everybody seems to know of Mom's was created in 1950 when she was at home recuperating. And then on the bottom of the case, second case, is a creche or a nativity scene that she hand-carved, handmade. It's remarkable. And little baby Jesus in his manger is a three-piece piece. The baby's separate, the blanket's separate, and the manger is separate. And they all fit perfectly together. And why the poor wise man never got painted, she doesn't remember. But she gave that to her mother as a thank you gift in 1953. Then she became rather inactive because she went to Germany to marry my dad in 1954, and they spent a year and a half over there. And when they came back, she soon had my brother and started a family. Very busy with 3 stair-step kids, so she didn't get much done. Once we were in school, boy, did she get busy. She went to Mansfield University to get her teaching degree, and what you see in the corner, the copperwork, the Judith wood carving, all of those came from being at Mansfield, and the oils around the corner where Ann is pointing to. They were all studies and work at Mansfield University, where she learned so much and so many things, including wool. She learned to clean it, comb it, dye it, spin it, and weave it. Start to finish. So we have one piece left, and that's the wallboard over there. And then she did several things for the Presbyterian Church. She loved doing things, their cover bulletins, and those are some samples of that. Pen and ink, she was prolific at. It's so good. The homestead next to the weaving over there is her mother's childhood home. And that also was a gift for her mother. And back into the 70s, we've gone into the 70s, now we're getting into the 80s with batik. She went to Airmont in Tennessee to learn how to do batik. And while she was there, she grabbed onto it big time and really did some amazing works. When she finally was good at the wax and dye method, she learned that you could actually take the dye and mix certain things with it to thicken it, and she could skip the whole wax process and start painting on silk as if it were batik. And that's what the Run Child Run banner is. That is painting on batik. And that banner comes from a poem written by her mother called Run Child Run. Her mother wrote that in 1945 after the bombing of Hiroshima. And it was published in a magazine. And then as a homage to that poem, Mom did that banner in the 70s, late 70s, when she and my dad became active in the nuclear disarmament movement in Wellsboro. So she did that to depict the poem of a child picking mushrooms to eat in the grass, and then the loud explosion and the mushroom in the sky. Run, child, run. So it's very, very deep, that piece. She also did a batik banner that was huge, that depicted like stained glass windows, and I don't have a picture of it. Stained glass windows with a ribbon running through it, and all the stained glass windows were symbols of peace. And that hangs in a church over in Budapest still to this day, as far as I know. Things can change. After batik, not after batik, because of batik and painting direct dye onto fabric, she honed her watercolor skills so that she could work on the fabrics. So that's when she started doing some watercolors, which you'll see. She managed to do that quite well too. One of my all-time favorite watercolors is the lace window. Yeah. And if you look closely, which I didn't discover for years, behind the lace is frost on the window. And that was our living room window, one single pane of glass before they had them replaced. So on a cold winter's morning, you had frost on every window. And the morning sun was coming through that window, through the lace, and she just captured it so perfectly. She was amazing. And the purple woods, one of my favorites. She had a knack for taking liberty with color, as best as I can say. She would somehow see something totally different color than what was actually there. I don't know how the mind works when you're painting to translate it from that color to this color consistently, but she did it beautifully. There, and what we call the pink pond with the pink cattails and the purple. It's stunning to me, but not real. I mean, the picture itself is real, the color's not real. With the watercolor class here at the Geminer, she went to ASAP a lot and did some drawings, so you'll see pictures of ASAP quite a bit, or even our yard. She always tried to do what she was seeing, and most of the times it was our land, our yard, or places around us. The rug maker, a favorite of many, as I've heard on Facebook, was a statue that she got out in Arizona, and she loved it so much. They met the artist, can't recall the name off the top of my head, but it's White something, which she pays tribute to in the picture itself. But her rendition of that in pencil is phenomenal. It's outstanding. In 1994, Mom retired from teaching. And as a present, my dad gave her a week's stay at Ghost Ranch, which is Georgia O'Keeffe's ranch in New Mexico. It was probably the best thing my dad ever did for my mom, in her book. But they stayed at that little cottage that's just to the left of the Cliff Dwellers that has the blue in it, that was the cottage they stayed at. And for a week, Mom was immersed in Georgia O'Keeffe, and we have dozens of her quick sketches that she did. And I'd have to be very rich to frame everything that she did. But it's phenomenal. We have a pile of Ghost Ranch pictures. And even she did my dad, the one gold frame at Ghost Ranch. Of course, she did it on anything, just cheap paper, so watercolor made it wrinkle, but you still gotta keep it. When they were in Arizona, they lived out there about 10 years, half of the year. Go out during the cold months here, which we all love to do, especially now, and come back for the nice weather here. But while they were out there, their favorite thing was to get in the car. Mom would take her art and Dad would drive, and they'd just drive all over. Dad looking for animals and Mom looking for beautiful things. And Mom would just sketch on her lap in the car until she was using watercolors at the time, until she realized it was too hot and it would dry up before she could finish the picture. Not how she wanted it, and she just gave it up and took up pastels. So you see the transition into the 90s, she turned straight into pastels and she never looked back. She just continued. Many Vista pictures in there. There's some special vistas if you look closely. I'll leave that joke out. But oh, the feather. Oh, Mom was absolutely incredible in drawing feathers. Pastel, watercolor, pen and ink. They just came to life on the paper. And that beautiful pen and ink on that pedestal was drawn on a cheap piece of typing paper, sprayed with spray glue and stuck on a piece of cardboard and thrown in a drawer. Where we discovered it, I don't know, 20 years later, moths had eaten it, pooped on it, chewed it. I was so sad when I saw it, but I did my best, and I think it looks pretty good. As we say, it's perfectly fine. At this point in life, it's perfectly fine. And then one of her last series that she did were the clouds. And we just have 4 left. I know that there was a dozen of them, but she was fascinated with clouds all of her life. But in her final years, it just captured her. Any cloud was gorgeous to her, and she would sit and draw them. And I'm thankful that we got 4 of them left, but she had quite a collection of them. And turning to the Perfectly Fine wall, we spent 8 months going through things, thinking we'd found everything, and every time we found more. And literally packing up the show to bring it here, we found more. So who knows when that will end. But according to Mom, if she didn't put it in a frame, it wasn't ready to be framed. It had to be perfect, because if you put it behind glass, she couldn't fix it anymore. So it had to be perfect to go in a frame. But after she passed, she wasn't going to be able to fix these or do it, perfect them in whatever way she felt she needed. So Ann and I just decided to frame them as they were and call them Perfectly Fine. And that's what they are. Just perfectly fine. That's the way they're going to be. Please take a chance to look at her unframed artwork that we have for sale. Just way too much to put in frames for you. We couldn't even put it up. We had. So this is an easier way to let you see everything that we have ready for the show. And hopefully you'll find something. Almost forgot the last pictures here. This final picture of the bouquet she did in 2012. It's the last framed picture that we had that she did really well. And that was a bouquet that she and Larry received, her second husband, when they arrived home for their marriage. And she immediately sat down to paint that And Larry fell even more in love with her. he was just mesmerized by her abilities, and he loved to watch her paint. And Mom couldn't have had a better ending to her life because she was adored, truly adored. And the last three paintings that I haven't talked about, watercolor on the left, one of my favorites, watercolors of fall. The middle one is our silo field on our property. And the last one is what Ann and I feel is her most perfect pastel. And it's apples. One apple that she turned in 3 different positions. And a friend of hers, Nikki, had been given some seeds from Russia, apple seeds from Russia, and that friend had grown the apple tree and brought 3 apples to a art group and gave one to Mom. That's that. Thank you all for coming. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any, but I'm talked out. Thank you. Oh, I didn't mention these little things hanging on all the doorways. Mom, prolific Mom, had 30-minute sketches. She just decided she had to do these in 30 minutes and made them 2-inch squares. So these are scanned copies of those that she did. There's 13 different versions of them, all done within 30 minutes. Pencil sketches. Enjoy. Any questions?
If you have any questions, I think you probably need to sit down. So come and see her. Come see Tim. If you have questions about Josh's work, please enjoy some refreshments back in the studio. We have lots of food left back there. I don't want to have to take it all home. So please enjoy those. And thank you all very much for coming out to celebrate the life and these 2 people who could find beauty in nature around them and in their dreams. So
Thank you,
hope you
Carrie.
enjoy it.
Thank you very much.